So it's a joy to be here. And we had gone through something. That's why I didn't share it as my testimony earlier, because in my message I'll be sharing it. We went through something last week, which is going to be a testimony. And then God just put this topic on my heart. And the topic is God's master plan. None of us know God's master plan, but there is a master plan which involves all of us into that plan. So we are all just parts of that plan. The whole God's master plan does not revolve around one individual. Though we are only concerned a lot about our own lives, what is happening, has God forgotten us, and doesn't God see what we are going through? Like, each of us are going through difficulties in our own way. Some may be minor compared to somebody else's, some may be major compared to somebody else's, but each one is always going through some kind of trial. So, but it's all just a part of God's master plan. God is weaving it all together. You know, and we all know our famous verse, Romans 8:28, and we know that all things, not some things, not maybe a few things here and there, no, all things, good and bad, all things work together. They don't work individually, they work together for good. It says very clearly, it works together for good for those who love God. So that's a very important thing. Do we love God? If we love someone, we will trust them. So if we love God, we will completely trust it in His hand, even though we cannot understand what's happening, even though we just cannot understand why God can't just step in and do things the way we think it should be done. But that would be so foolish, because we don't know anything. God's master plan is so amazing. We should just learn to love Him and trust Him with it. So it says, it all works out together for good to those who love God and those who are called according to His purpose. So we have been called not according to our purpose, according to our plans and purposes, according to His purpose. So in God's master plan, the whole world, all of His creation plays a part. So He has got that amazing master plan that we cannot see. We are just tiny, it's like these tiny little ants. What can they see? They can't even see the room we are sitting in. And for us, they're so tiny. We can just stamp and then we can, destroy a whole pile of them. That's how we are in God's master plan. We're just such tiny little bits. Now, have you all heard of a tapestry? Do you know what's a tapestry? Tapestry is like a wall hanging. In nowadays, of course, they do it all machine made. Earlier, people would sit and actually knit or stitch or whatever and create this beautiful picture. And the thing is, anyone who sews knows that we put the knots and everything underneath, inside, right? When we are stitching something, on the top, we will make sure everything looks very neat and clean. But underneath will all be the knots and the ties of whatever you're sewing. So similarly, that's how a tapestry is. Tapestry is so beautiful on the upper side, but the back side always looks full of knots and it doesn't look anything near like the original. Okay. So I have something here. I'll just show you. Now see, this is a bit of a tapestry. Now this is machine made, so it actually does look a little nice. But if you can see, it's just gray and a little bit of red here and there. Alena is showing her own tapestry at the back. Anyway, as you can see this gray, and it doesn't look very nice. But when you see the actual side of the tapestry, see how beautiful it is. See this side. This is how it is. But the back side looks very dull and gray. So that is how sometimes our lives are. The underside is messed up. What we can see, imagine God's master plan just laid out. God can see that beautiful picture. We can only see some grays and some knots and what's happening in our life. We can't make sense out of it because we cannot see the other side of it yet. Okay. So although we cannot see the big picture, we know the creative artist. We know who is in charge of this master plan. And although our little bit doesn't make any sense at all, it is going to fit perfectly into the master plan. So every color matters. Every gray, every black, every red, everything that we go through, all those dark times, all those bright times, Everything matters, and it's all woven in beautifully into God's master plan. Now, what is our part in this? God is doing the weaving, and we are bits and parts there. But what should be our attitude when we face all these little things in our life? The attitude matters. That is very, very important. It says all things work together for good to those who love God. In other words, when God works, it is possible for us to receive the good. And it is also possible for us not to receive the good. It all depends on our attitude. If we have a grumbling, complaining attitude, we will take longer to see the good. And we may not even see the good because we are just trying to control the whole master plan. We are thinking, God is just not doing it our way. We have specific prayers. God, I want it this way. I want, before this date, I want this done. And we start putting deadlines to God. We are trying to control. That's very bad. We can take, so our attitude even determines how soon we will receive the good out of what is being worked out in our lives. Now, if our attitude is right, we will receive the good immediately. It may even delay, but it doesn't matter. Our attitude, despite the delay, should be perfect, should be pleasing to God. Why? Not because we are trying to strive and act good. No, because we trust the Master. We trust God. We know He loves us and we love Him. And we can just entrust ourselves. Now, if imagine if our dad is doing something for us, we just know our dad loves us, so we can just trust God to take care of it. So if we love God, everything that is of God will work for our good. Now, let's just look at the Bible. Look at the attitude of Joseph versus the attitude of the Israelites. Now, you know the attitude of the Israelites. They were having a tough time in Egypt. God brought them out of Egypt. God parted the Red Sea to let them cross. God gave them manna in the desert. God gave everything, but they were constantly complaining and grumbling, and they even wished they could go back to that slavery in Egypt because they were not getting things the way they planned it, or they were not getting things quick enough. And then they were scared to enter the promised land, and then they ended up wandering in the desert for 40 years. Now let's look at the attitude of Joseph. Joseph, when he was just 17 years old, he saw this dream. He was a favorite of his father, and he saw a dream that his brothers and his parents were bowing down to him, and he told the dream to them. And they were very irritated about it. So he was just 17 years old then. So it was something God was telling him, this is what I have for your future. God gave him that dream at 17. And so we think, wow, like supposing I saw that dream, wow, I'm so excited. I'm going to be, something, God has a great plan for me. But just look at the way Joseph's life went. Do you think God fell asleep after giving him the dream, or do you think God forgot how to work out Joseph's life, or God didn't get it right, or God just went away into somebody else's life? No, that is exactly how God ordained it and how things were supposed to work out, because God has a master plan. Now, Joseph had dreams of his brothers and parents bowing to him. What happens then? Joseph's brothers were jealous of him and they sell him as a slave. Imagine a person who has got this amazing dream, his own family, his own brothers who he thought he could trust, just put him into a pit and then put him up and they say, let's just sell him off. They sell him off to some people who are just traveling by. And in those days, it's not like a phone call away or an email away. You have no clue where that person goes after that. And they take it for granted that he's dead. They tell his parents he's dead. They tell his father he's dead. So that's what he was sold as a slave. And then what happens? He becomes the slave in Potiphar's house, and there he's thriving because God was with him there. And he's thriving as a slave, and then finally Potiphar, hands over his whole household to him. Then what happens? I think, okay, Joseph has just made it. He's coming up. And then what happens? He gets falsely accused. Again, where is God? Can't God see all this? Not enough that he had to be sold as a slave into a strange country. He did not grumble. He still had a good attitude. He took good care of his master's house. Then he gets falsely accused for trying to avoid committing sin. He didn't want to sleep with his master's wife, and he was trying to avoid it. Why? Because he feared God. So because he feared God, he gets falsely accused and then he's thrown into prison. Imagine that. How unfair is that? Where is God in the equation? Did Joseph grumble? No. Did he question? Do you see any account of that in the Bible? No, you don't. Whereas you see Moses saying, God, I cannot, they will not listen to me if I go to get them. There are people who talk to God and say, God, I don't think it's a good idea. I can't speak. I stammer, things like that. Moses was saying, but Joseph, no, he did not grumble. He went to prison, and there again, he found favor with the prisoner, the jailer, and he became the favorite in prison. Imagine. So wherever he goes, he just continued to have a good attitude and do his very best, because he knows my God, my creator, is molding everything. I don't have to know why, when, where, what. He's taking care of it. I can just trust, take it easy. Then what happens? The butler, the chief butler and the chief baker are thrown into the same prison. You think it's a coincidence? No. God is working out his master plan. So Joseph had to be pulled out from Israel and come into Egypt, because why would he have to come into Egypt, into a pagan land? That was again God's master plan. Then he is in prison, and then there's a chief butler and chief baker who's thrown into the same prison. They have a dream. Because Joseph trusts God, God reveals that dream to him. He tells them their dream, and it comes to pass. And he says, please don't forget me when you go. What happens? The butler forgets about Joseph for 2 whole years. And you would think, how unfair. At least then, if the butler just went and said, Pharaoh, there is this guy, please let him out, he would have got out immediately. No, but God had to keep them for another 2 years. What is God up to? God has a master plan that none of us can see. It's a master plan. It's not just a simple plan that we think, okay, if it was us, we would have thought, please, God, just get us out at least now. But no, God had a more beautiful plan. And for that, he had to stay there for 2 more years. Don't ask why. We don't know. Joseph never bothered to ask why. He was okay with that. He stayed on. 2 more years. What happens? Pharaoh sees the dream. Then the butler remembers, and then Joseph is called, and then what happens? He becomes second only to Pharaoh in the whole country of Egypt. How do you think God can take a Hebrew boy from Israel and bring him into Egypt and make him second to Pharaoh? How? I mean, it sounds so impossible to our minds, but in God's master plan, everything can work out. Imagine he becomes second only to Pharaoh. Then what happens? And that time, you know how old he is when he is promoted to this post? He's 30 years old. We're talking about a boy who saw a dream when he was 17 years old. And now when he gets this position, he's 30 years old. So that's a gap of about 13 years, right? So that's a 13 years gap. So when we get a prophecy or something like that, we don't think, okay, tomorrow it's going to happen. No matter what happens in between that time, just stay faithful, have a good attitude, trust God, because he is working out a master plan. Stop asking why, don't ask why. Then what happens? Again, that was 30 years old, and then there is a famine, as Joseph had seen, and then his brothers come and they get reunited. The brothers come and they bow down to him, and that is when he was 39 years old. So that was 22 years later that this dream came to pass. Okay, so he's 39 years old. Then what happens? Joseph is reunited with his family. He forgives his brothers. He does not take revenge, or he does not ask his brothers, why did you do this to me? You guys were so mean. He doesn't bother. What would we do? If someone has been mean to us all our life, and when we get the chance, we would say, how could you do that? How dare you did that? And we will take that chance to get revenge, take revenge. He did not. You know what happens when Jacob passes away and his brothers are like scared? Now, he's going to take revenge. What does Joseph say? Genesis chapter 50, verse 19 and 20. Joseph is saying, fear not, for am I in the place of God? He's saying, why are you even scared? Do you think I am God, that I am going to take revenge or punish you? I mean, that's how he thinks. God had a plan. He says, you intended to harm me, but God intended it all for good. So see how he depended on God. So he didn't say, you guys put me here and because of you, I had to suffer so much. And do you know, he knew it's not them who promoted him to the second place in Pharaoh's house. So if it's not them who did that, how can he blame them for anything else? He said, am I God? No, God took care of this. You guys wanted to harm me, but God used it all for good. And he brought me to this position so I could save the lives of many people. This is what he's saying. Because he did save the lives of all the Egyptians, all the nearby countries, including his father and brothers, all the Israelites. He was able to save all their lives because of interpreting that dream and taking good care of all the seed that was in the land during the years of plenty. You know. So what happened? Now Joseph is captured by the upper story, the tapestry. He cannot see. He can only see the underside. He's in the pit. He's sold as a slave. Then he goes into prison. He's falsely accused. And then the butler forgets about him. He can see all the grays and the blacks and the knots. But he knows that God is working out a master plan on the other side. So he just takes it easy. He doesn't grumble. He never grumbled or complained. So what is your attitude to everything that you are going through today? Ask yourselves, what is your attitude? Are you trusting God, the master planner? Are you trusting him? Or are you trying to tell God, God, I need a job today. God, I need this today. I need my son to get married tomorrow. I need the visa day after. Are you trying to dictate terms to God? Are you trying to settle for something that God doesn't have for you? God has an amazing plan for you. Just wait for the best. Ask Job. Ask Joseph, Daniel, Moses, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. All of them went through. Why did Daniel have to be thrown into the lion's den if he was so faithful to God and everything? We don't know why. But you know, God is not thinking only of Daniel. God is also thinking of the king who threw him. You remember the king, when Daniel comes out of the lion's den unharmed, the king is able to say, wow, Daniel, your God is the true king. Mind you, that's a pagan king, but he is able to see that, Daniel, your God is the true God. He's able to say that. So God is concerned about everybody. You're not the only one that he's weaving into that master plan. God thinks of everyone and he doesn't want to harm anyone. He has got amazing plans. Be like Joseph. Wait with an attitude, a good attitude, a trusting attitude, and love God through it all, because everything is being worked out for your good. Now, what the answer is not trying to think, okay, so God is working out something. So how does this fit in there? Trying to figure out where your problem fits into God's tapestry. No, don't even bother with that. All we have to do is to know and trust the weaver. That's all. We just need to know who is the weaver, who is the one weaving the plan. It's God, and just trust him completely. He is a God who redeems and restores even the most broken and hopeless situation, even when we don't understand why or how. He actually calls us to live almost exclusively looking at the underside of the tapestry. Most of the time, all we have when we are living on this earth is only the underside of the tapestry. We can only see the grays and the blacks and the knots. Sometimes we will never see the top. We'll never see the master plan, but he can. So we just need to trust him. We just need to trust that there is a beautiful side being created by the master. And, you know, while we are going through those grays or those dark times in our lives, God doesn't say, okay, just sit down for a pity party now because you're going through a tough time. No, we continue to live with a good attitude like Joseph did. Even when he was in prison, he was out there encouraging others, interpreting dreams for them, asking the butler and the baker, why are you guys looking so low today? What happened to you? That's how he went with that conversation. He didn't sit there thinking, oh, I'm in prison, falsely accused so many years, woe is me. And he sat in a corner where, no, he got up and he was out there encouraging, doing his best. He won favor with everyone in the prison. So when you're going through your dark times, when you're jobless, when you don't have the visa, when you are sick, when you're going through so many difficulties, when you have lost a near and dear one, when everything is bad, as you see it as bad as going on in your life, trust God's master plan. Know that he's weaving something beautiful. And so that doesn't let you off the hook to just sit in self-pity. That's the time you go out and continue to bless people joyfully. Why? Because you trust God. You know God is working out something beautiful for you. You continue to love God. You show that amazing attitude. That's when there is a difference. They look at you. You're going through such a tough time. How can she or he be so joyful? What is the secret? The secret is I don't have to worry. There's someone who loves me so much that he's taking such good care of me and he has an amazing plan. But why are these things happening in your life? I have no clue, but he knows. He knows, and he's working it all out for the best. So there's a God we can trust. So the coming back to our testimony bit, it was like, last Saturday when 18 was going on, we were in the hospital with my dad. So we have been in and out of hospitals for months now, hospitals or taking care of my dad at home. So it was continuously taking care of them. Finally, on Saturday, Papa got discharged. He came home. And Sunday, we said bye to them and we are leaving. Why? We are getting ready to come to Mumbai and meet the kids and all of that. So we just said bye to them, came to our place in Tiruvalla. So it's just both of us. And for quite some time, I had been telling Prasad, I need to drive because I have my license. I said, I need to drive because the longer I don't drive, I'll then just give up on driving. So I just need to drive. So he kept saying we had some problem with the gear. So he said, okay, let me just get that fixed, then you can drive. And it was going on forever. I'm talking about more than a year or two, I haven't driven. That day on Sunday, as we were leaving my parents' place, he said, okay, you drive. Out of the blue. Okay. And I thought, okay, I got up and I drove. It was like a half an hour drive to our place. I drove and I thought, oh, okay, it's pretty cool. I have not lost the, thing yet and I can drive it. So he said, okay, so now you're an expert at driving. We came home and then we are alone at home. And then what happened? All the tiredness of all those weeks continuously taking care of Papa and all just caught up on me. And I never sleep in the afternoon. That day I just said, I'm just so tired. I'm just going to lie down for a nap. I thought maybe for 5 minutes, but I slept for 3 whole hours undisturbed. Okay. And I woke up and thinking, wow, I had such an amazing sleep. I didn't know God was preparing me for something. I drove that day out after maybe 2 years. I slept for 3 hours, which is like absolutely unusual. And then in the night, Prasad was working outside the whole day. He likes to plant and dig and he's always busy doing those kind of things. So around 11 o'clock in the night, he came in and then he had a slight wound. I'm just talking about a small slit, like, something that you would totally ignore on your hand. He had that, but he has this habit of cleaning it. And he, the antibiotic capsules, he opens that capsule and he puts a little bit of that powder on that wound because it heals quickly. And he has done that several times on his leg. And even a few months back, he did that for a whole week on his leg and it healed well. So he just put that around 11 o'clock or something in the night. And he asked me to put a band-aid for him, which I did. I just put a band-aid. And 5 minutes later, we went to bed. We switched off the light. But just lying down, then he jumped up quickly and he said, I'm feeling very uneasy. Something is wrong. And he started coughing very badly. So I switched on the light. I said, what's it? And he can't talk. He's coughing. He went running into the bathroom. He vomited. I went to get him some hot water. By the time I came back, when people have this extremely bad cough, they turn red and tears are pouring out of their eyes. He looked like that. And suddenly I looked at his face. It's fully red. His neck is red. And there are rashes all over here. And it's 11:30 in the night and we are all alone at home. And I asked him, what is this? What's happening to you? And he can barely speak. And he said, I think it's allergy, some kind of allergy. So I was like, did something bite you? Something you ate? What is it? So he said, no, I think it's the amoxicillin reaction. Amoxicillin, that powder which he had put, So I was like, so what do you think we should do? He said, let's go to the hospital. I said, okay. Imagine I had driven that day after 2 years. So I was okay to take the car. Otherwise, I would have been like, drive now in the middle of the night. I would have been so not at all confident. Okay, let's get dressed quickly. We had our clothes lying out there, what we had just changed out of. We just put it on quickly. I think within less than 5 minutes, we were out. I drove him quickly to emergency Believers Hospital. By then it's 11:30, nearly 12 in the night. And as I'm driving, I cannot really get out and get him out because I'm on the driver's side. So when we reached emergency, He got out. He said, okay, I'll get out. He got out. They brought a wheelchair and they wheeled him in. I went and parked and I came back. By then, he had taken the tablets in his pocket. Though he was finding it difficult to talk, he managed to tell them, this is the tablet, this is what I did on my hand. And then that was it. He was ready to collapse. They put him on the bed quickly and they gave him an adrenaline injection. So this is called anaphylaxis shock. You can go into anaphylaxis shock. And if we had delayed by a few minutes, it would have been fatal. He could have lost his life. That's how bad it was. So we didn't waste any time. We took the car, we came there. He managed to go and he didn't wait for me to go park and come. He managed to go and say what he had to and then collapsed on the bed in emergency. And there he vomited twice. They gave him an adrenaline injection. It did not work. They gave him one more injection. And then he was sort of calm, but he was shivering and everything. And they came and told me he has to be admitted in ICU and monitored for 24 hours because it can recur. And I'm thinking, it's now, I'm talking about 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, early morning. I am fresh because I had that 3 hours sleep in the night. I'm absolutely fresh. I'm not fatigued. I'm not tired. I'm very alert. I'm very calm. I was able to drive. And just those two things in my head, how did it just happen that I drove that day and emergency came that day? How did it happen that I slept very, very unusually for 3 hours? And then, so, it may sound really silly to you guys, but for me, those two things were really big, but it just showed me how much our God loved us. It just showed me, it was like a big hug God was giving me. See, my child, I have got you. That was what I felt like. My God made sure I could drive. My God made sure that I had a good rest. So I was not affected at all. And then I was informing, all our close near ones to pray and things like that. I remember John knew, and John was like, okay, I'm starting the car. I'm coming right now. It's just like 1 o'clock early morning. I'm like, John, relax. It's okay. If I need you, I'll call you. And then after that, around 3 o'clock, they were moving him into ICU and they told me, okay, you can now. I drove back home. And this is like a big house in a very lonely place, not like neighbors all around the place, nothing. There's just shops around. It's just a very lonely house. And I would have been scared, knowing me, to drive alone into that house or even spend one night alone in that house. But I drove out from the hospital at 3:30 early morning, not a fly on the road. I drove all the way, came home, opened that door, went in, and I felt like that house was fully inhabited with a lot of people. I didn't even feel like I was all alone. I was able to lie down and take 2 hours of sleep for going back to the hospital the next day. I was amazed at the peace that we felt. And because we reached on time, Prasad's case was also taken care of. He had to spend about 12 hours in the hospital and then he was, discharged. I know he was moved into the ward. Okay. Again, we wanted a private room. They didn't have a private room. Sorry, all the rooms are booked. There's only the ward. The first thought, why ward? Second thought, yes, ward is the only way we will meet other people. So God has a purpose there. God wants us to meet someone. Just came automatically into my mind. And then I went back home the next day in the afternoon as they were moving him from ICU to the ward. I came there. I was there with him while they moved him. Came and sat down next to him on his bed. Next to his bed. And there was a couple right next to us. There was no way I would have met that couple in my whole life if I hadn't come to that ward. It was a youngish couple, a Hindu couple. They were lying there and he was going to get his angioplasty or something done the next day. And I was there just for a very short time. I was leaving immediately. But we just got talking to them. What happened to you? He said, I was working in Dubai. I had a stroke. I came down and his wife was also talking. And then so I got up and I talked a little more with them. And I said, can I pray for you? You should have just seen their face, They were like so full of respect, suddenly full of tearing up. Oh, please pray for us. And they were like, we have a lot of Christians staying all around us. And we actually believe, I believe, for Hindus, how it is, they don't mind adding Jesus or another 10 gods because they already have hundreds. They don't mind. They are okay with all gods. They're like, yeah, we believe Jesus is good. And there are a lot of Christians around us who pray for us and things like that. So yes, we would love for you to pray. So, I'm not very fluent in Malayalam, but I'm learning slowly to share the gospel in Malayalam and God is using me. So I was able to share it in a very simple way. Like I'm telling Alena a story, I was able to just explain the gospel to them and explain that we have lost our son, but see, we are living with such hope because, because we know we'll see him again. And I put in my testimony in the middle of that gospel and presented it to him. And he said, many people have told us about Jesus, but no one has told us so simply. And for the first time, I've actually understood what you're trying to say. And I was like, wow. And he said, for the first time, I understand. I said, yeah, because Jesus has done it all. You don't have to climb any mountain. You don't have to roll on the floor. You don't have to do anything. All you have to do is believe and say, Jesus, please come and take over my life. And he will just show you the way. So they were really touched. I was able to pray for them and I was able to leave. And then later, actually, when he was going for his procedure, he asked, will she come back again to pray? He said, no, and he gave the phone and I prayed for him over the phone. And he said, yeah, the priest over there used to go. I said, you don't have to wait for any priest or bishop or anyone. Jesus is living in each and every one of us. That's why now I'm praying for you. I'm not a priest. I'm not a bishop. I'm nothing. I'm praying for you because Jesus lives in me. And you, once you have Jesus living in you, when you ask Jesus to come in, you can go and pray for others and God will listen to your prayer. So just remember, God has given us the authority as individuals. We don't have to look for any post or any denomination or nothing of that sort. So he received it so beautifully. And I think it was so beautiful. And remember when Pastor PR Baby came last time, he told everybody, read this chapter and read the book of Genesis. So he had given the book of Genesis for us, okay? Actually for my son, I don't know whether he read it or not, but I decided, okay, let me do it 5 times. So what I started doing was audio Bible. And I started doing it, but then I thought that's an amazing way because actually I'm in my Bible study, I'm doing the New Testament. So I thought, okay, Old Testament, if I just do 1 chapter 5 times a day, and you know how I started doing it? On this new version of the Bible, I just downloaded 5 audio versions. So I've listened to, say, Genesis 1 in the 5 versions of that. So it's very good. And even if you miss it 3 times in your days, you will somehow get the gist of it. So I ended up listening to the story of Joseph all over again, these stories that you know so well. And that made me think, wow, Joseph's attitude, what all he went through, the delays he went through after seeing such an amazing dream, and how God used all of that to save those people from the famine. And so I thought maybe I haven't figured it out. Maybe all of this emergency was just so that we could reach that one couple in that hospital. Who knows? We don't know. We don't know God's master plan. We cannot see it. But when we have submitted our lives to God, we are available to Him to use us whichever way we want. It may be through an emergency in our life, but that's the only way we can get there. Just as he had to be sold as a slave to get to Egypt. How else could he get there? But it's not about us. It's not about me and my life. It's about God and His master plan. And I am willing to be any part of that master plan in whichever way He wants to use me. So that is the kind of attitude each of us should be having, not try to protect us and our people. No, it's all about God. It says, die to self. You should no longer value your own life more than anything. You should be available to God to do with your life whatever He wants to bring others to Him. So that's how you should be submitted to God. And that reminded me of this tapestry. And there's this poem by Corrie ten Boom. I don't know if you all have heard of her. She was a Dutch Christian. She was a watchmaker. Her father, they had a watchmaking shop. You must go and watch her movie, The Hiding Place. It's beautiful. Okay, so it's a real story. They were watchmakers. And during that time, during the Holocaust, when they were killing all the Jews, though they were Dutch Christians, they started helping all the Jews to hide in their house. And in these boxes, like, where they carry these huge grandfather clocks, they used to smuggle these Jews out to places and try to save them from being killed. And finally, they got caught because of trying to save the others. And they were thrown into these, what do you call that place? These concentration camps. They were thrown into the concentration camp. And how they suffered. She lost her father in that. Her father died. Her sister died. And she was left all alone. So she could have questioned God. Why, God? We were saving your people. and my father ended up dying. My sister ended up dying, and I've been thrown into the concentration camp. No food, no nothing. But why? God needed to reach those people in the concentration camp. She was able to reach. She was able to reach them and preach to them and bring the good news to them and bring hope to them. So be willing to give up your life for the sake of whatever God wants to use it for you. That is what is meant by dying to self. And she wrote this beautiful poem, okay? And I'll just read it out to you. My life is but a weaving between my God and me. I cannot choose the colors. He weaveth steadily. Oftentimes he weaveth sorrow, and I in foolish pride forgets he sees the upper and I the underside. Not till the loom is silent and the shuttles cease to fly will God unroll the canvas and reveal the reason why. The dark threads are as needful in the weaver's skillful hand as the threads of gold and silver in the pattern he has planned. He knows, he loves, he cares. Nothing this truth can dim. He gives the very best to those who leave the choice to him. And that is such an amazing thing. So we need to leave the choice to him with a good attitude, not try to dictate God. And I just want to show you this tapestry, which I showed you was all this gray and everything. We cannot see God's master plan, but I just want to show you this. I don't know if you can see this. It's a beautiful wall hanging. It says, "Oh, come, let us adore him." That's what it says. "Oh, come, let us adore him." It's a beautiful wall hanging. So let's always remember that God is weaving a beautiful tapestry out of all of our lives, and we are just bits and parts of it, but he has an amazing master plan. Thank you. That's it. Praise God. Over to you guys.